I think in the next 30 years, this country is going to be Christian conservative. So it's an example I've given before, but for the context, I'll say it again. In the early 2000s, a survey was done. It found that liberals were having, I think, 1.54 kids or something like that on average, and conservatives were having 2.01. That meant that conservatives were at replacement levels and liberals weren't. 20 years later, we get this poll that shows, or about 20 years later, 18 years, that Gen Z is slightly more conservative than millennials, but only slightly. They're very, very similar. And a lot of people assumed that meant that Gen Z was based, that they were waking up, that the culture war message was getting to them, but that's not reality. The reality is conservatives just had more kids, ergo, more conservative Gen Z. That's it. Simple math. Yeah. So what we see from the left is an attempt to indoctrinate kids because leftists don't have children, they have yours. Now we're seeing them attempt to get red states to enact an abortion rights, because they want Republicans to abort their kids. Otherwise, what you get right now, today, the left is substantially more likely to not have kids. I was looking at a graph and it's plummeted. But conservatives are actually fairly stable, though it has gone down. Just give it 18 more years. 18 years from today, it's going to be 2040. We're all going to still be, middle-aged. And we're going to be seeing a substantially more conservative country.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be Christian conservative.
Yeah, it will.
I doubt it, dude. Ancient religions are on their way out.
Hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, bud.
That's right.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, but since nonsense also
maybe
phased
Muslim.
away.
It
doesn't have to
it's
be
been here for 2,000 years.
I know. It's time for something new, man.
Well, nonsense fades away.
Years.
Nonsense fades away. It's been 2,000 years. What's going on?
Ian, it got rewritten like 5 times and co-opted by the
King. By who?
Protestants.
When, by who, and what did they change?
The Cathars, the Lollards.
You're not answering.
What
did they change?
Okay, we're not.
They said the Byzantines, dude.
Ian is proving Seamus's point.
No, you're asking me what they changed.
Literally proven him correct.
About what statement? He didn't even
say
a statement.
He says it persists and nonsense fades away.
Yeah, but it also became the Orthodox Church. It's obvious that the Romans are the patriarchy. Like the Roman Catholic Church was created to suppress and control people.
Ian,
like you were saying about marriage, it demonizes children born out of wedlock.
You've proved Seamus's point.
He wasn't making a point. We were just having a conversation.
What? He made a point.
I
said because Christians are having children more than the left, the future will be Christian conservative.
Yeah, but that's a 1 + 1 = 2 argument. That's not how humans work. It's not a math equation.
Seamus said the hand that cradle rocks the world, and you disagreed and said it's fading away. Then you went on to say that despite all of the things that happened throughout history, the religion persisted and evolved and was changed, and all of that, whether it's true or not. You're arguing that instead of fading out and dying, it was reinvigorated and re-embraced and expanded to the point where it's bigger than it's ever been throughout history.
Because there was universal truth beneath the sins. There was a truth that persisted throughout the ages beneath the sins. And in the same way, the sins of the Roman Empire are not an indictment of God. The sins of our founding fathers are not an indictment of America. There is a difference between ideas and the application of those ideas. And then this is something that even conservatives have had trouble trying to articulate to people who don't necessarily believe in God. Many people who don't believe in God don't necessarily believe in a traditional view of America or American citizenship. And it is a great info war. Slavery is not an indictment of America's foundational values. In fact, the Constitution was used to justify freeing the slaves. So it actually vindicates that our Constitution and our American founding values were brilliant and were inclusive in some ways and were humane. But the application of them in the early stages was certainly not. But those things aren't an indictment of the ideas themselves and certainly not an indictment of God.
Well, I know a lot of people that call themselves Christian that go to church and then they get wasted. True. And like your body's a temple, really? Like that's the point. You want to say that your body
completely true,
and that they'll just go like.
Again,
Christians don't need to worship Christ. You don't need to worship Jesus to be a Christian.
Does it say not to drink beer in the Bible?
No, so yeah, you cannot drink to the point of excess. You can't get drunk, which is to say you can't drink to the point where you are no longer able to make good decisions.
Right, and how insane! Like, come on, that's like the biggest criticism of like modern culture. People call themselves Christian, then they destroy themselves. Like, come on.
Well, look, there have been hypocrites in the Christian faith throughout all of history. Judas is one of the first bishops, right? And he betrayed Christ.
I don't know. That's all ancient text stuff, man. I don't know if it's real or not.
230 to 250 million Americans are Christian. And so I think one important point is that while the percentage may be lower than it was before, of people, there's still substantially more Christians in the country.
I'm a Christian, and I've taught God as much as anybody who comes on here, probably somewhat. But I agree with you, Ian.
My point's not even to bring up religion in the first place. My point was that, as Seamus said, the hand that rocks
people
the
who
cradle rules the world.
identify as Christian conservatives are going to be the majority. Identify, but I agree with you when you say that a lot of people who say they're Christian don't necessarily follow the laws of the faith. So yeah, there just like there's a referendum on what it means to be American, if we even want to have a country, and that is the referendum right now. Do we want to have a country? There's a referendum on Christianity and what it means to be Christian, what it means to be Catholic. They're having that argument in the Vatican right now. There is going to be an ongoing argument about what it means to be or identify with these institutions and these cultural beliefs. Again, that's not an indictment of the beliefs themselves. It's an indictment of man's application of belief.
I think that the ideals of Christianity are impossible to embody.
The argument about religion itself is not relevant to the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. The point I'm trying to make is that Christians are having children. Whether they truly believe in the Bible is totally immaterial. What matters is the left ideology will die because they don't have kids. Therefore, they argue for red states where there are more Christians to have abortion access, because that will result in more Christians having abortions, whether or not they believe in. There's going to be some young Christian girl who's like, I don't have a baby. I'm going to go do it. If it's illegal, she's going to go to her parents and say, what do I do? And they're going to say, we're going to support you. You're going to have the baby. This is, I think, a big reason, whether they're conscious of it or not. There are probably people on the left who realize since the 2000s, we have slowly been eroding.
Yep.
The leftist movement has been eroded. I mean, if you look at a lot of the left movements, it's always been about eradicating religion. But they're losing because they don't have kids. So this is why the school choice fight is so important for the Democrats. They can't allow people to take their kids out of schools and choose where they want to go. This is why they're freaking out over the Supreme Court decision in Maine that allows people to get public funding and choose whatever school they want, religious or otherwise. This is why they're freaking out about a coach who prayed for himself and students decided they wanted to pray with him. They said, no, he's leading them in prayer. No, he was praying. They also decided to pray. People are allowed to speak. You can't stop them or fire them from doing it. They're losing. They're not having kids. And with the internet, Christians, Christian conservatives, or even hypocritical Christian conservatives, if they call themselves that, still are expanding, growing, and defending their values, defending their kids. This is also why they're so freaked out about the don't say gay lie.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because they're like, we need to indoctrinate their kids because we don't have any. And this is why they're screaming, don't say pray.
Universal laws. And the real scary part is, in my opinion, it's a stopgap. Because if the LGBTQ-ism indoctrination doesn't work, they're going to be the ones who abandon the idea of democracy the fastest. Believe that the push for artificial intelligence and this whole automation-driven transhumanism idea is the plan B, you could say. No pun intended. It's the plan B for if the indoctrination doesn't work. And in the automation AI world, there will be no more democracy. And that's what they plan on doing. And that's what you see many factions of our government doing right now and going after conservatives like Steve Bannon. It's just, we're going to create a banana republic where the ideas of justice, democracy, freedom are completely relative, and we'll make them up as we go.
Yeah, it feels like we are headed towards a more conservative future if we do this right. Like, things have gotten way too wacky and like ready for change at a drop of a hat. Like, we need to conserve our values. But the reason I brought up that I don't think it'll be a Christian conservative is because I think people are bastardizing the word Christian, calling themselves Christian on paper, sitting in a church, repeating words, but they don't live like it.
I think you're biased. But you have I think you're biased. I think you have a negative view from media depictions of what a Christian is.
Maybe you might be right about that.
Because, like, of the Christians we've had here, has any one of them have been in any way as you've described it?
Oh, everyone's like, no one's perfect.
Yeah,
Seamus drinks, I mean.
Yeah, but like, I don't get
being Christian isn't predicated.
And drinking is not a sin as long as you're not drinking to excess or getting drunk.
Seamus, you tell me if I'm wrong, but my concept of being Christian fundamentally is, do you believe in sin or don't you? I mean, that's one of the anchors. And so when you say that there are Christians, people who identify as Christian, who are hypocrites, the distinction there is that they believe in sin. And they may be sinning, but they do believe that it is a sin and that there's a metaphysical accounting that they can then be redeemed from by having faith or by asking for repentance. And people who don't believe, they don't believe in a metaphysical accounting. And it's kind of, most of them believe in karma, which is the same thing essentially, but but some people don't believe in a universal accounting at all. And that's dangerous.
I think they're obviously fake Christians. There are people who claim to support a lot of ideas they don't support. There's a lot of people who are woke, who say they hate racism, but then they're super racist. There are a lot of people who claim to be Christian, and you see these videos of them, screaming and spitting on people. I also think that there is a media depiction of a Christian that is just outright not true. Of all of the religious people we've had come here, not a single one of them was as you described.
Oh, I mean, we sit with people for an hour and a half. I don't know those people.
Yeah,
sure. What do they think about when they're alone in their room at night? Like, I don't know.
But they've not screamed at you. They've not. You've not witnessed any of them be as you've described a Christian.
Christianity is held. It's a really weird thing. You're supposed to be like this benevolent, angelic thing that has no sin.
True.
You've washed away.
That's not what we believe.
Or you're just guilty about
no. And this is
betraying
exactly
the Catholic Church. And it's like what the.
You sit in front of Seamus all the time, and you say things like, "This is what it's supposed to be," but you've never bothered to actually sit down with Seamus and ask him what he believes.
Well, I mean, Seamus believes that when he drinks wine and eats bread, it's literally the body of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm not eating wine and drinking bread in that instance, but yeah, no, I do believe in transubstantiation. I believe in the Holy Eucharist. I do.
Like that.
So
say that.
But one thing I believe.
That's not relevant to the point I'm making. The
it
point
means
I'm making
that it's not. You cannot. A piece of bread is not literally a human being.
The point I'm making is that Seamus does believe that, and he is not lying about what he believes. And you consistently depict Christians as like rabid.
Well, you're saying that if a dad tells his kid, "Hey, kid, this bread is literally a human body," the kid's going to be like, "I don't believe that, Dad."
That's not what we're talking about.
Well, you're saying parents are going to have Christian kids. That's not how it works. When you lie to your kid and tell him something is what it's not, the kid sees through it.
That's not true.
So, Ian, there's a couple things here.
Kids are impressed upon by their parents and adopt their parents' values.
And there's a few things I want to mention because there's something I really want to touch on here. To be Christian, there's two tiers here, right? You're sort of discussing hypocrisy, and hypocrisy is a real phenomenon. But there's a difference between being someone who makes a mistake and sins, which everyone does, and Christians acknowledge that, and we call ourselves sinners, and someone who says, "I actually don't believe this is a sin, I'm going to do it anyway," while calling myself Christians. Now, you insinuated earlier that I'm a hypocrite because I drink, even though nothing in my faith prohibits drinking, as long as you're not getting drunk, because you don't know anything about my religion. You don't know what I believe because you haven't taken the time to ask me, but you were willing to make an accusation about me in front of literally tens of thousands of people.
I was told by a Catholic that I'm going to hell because I don't believe Jesus is the Son of God.
Does that justify any of what I just said?
Well, I mean, I'm asking you about your faith. You just told me I don't know anything about your faith. I'm countering that.
But my point is you made an accusation towards me, which insinuated
I don't know what your drinking is like. I've seen you get somewhat drunk. It's not that big of a deal.
Well,
but
yeah, I think you drink to the point where you're feeling a little bit like happy or bubbly, but you cannot drink to the point where you're making bad decisions.
Dude, I don't even care if people drink,
the point is, yeah. But
I care about people that are hypocrites.
You brought it up, exactly to insinuate that I'm a hypocrite, but you never stopped to ask me about any of this or what the faith teaches. And so I think that's really unfair because we've known each other for a long time. And especially if there is something you think I'm hypocritical on, then you have a conversation with a person instead of waiting until you're on air to try to make an accusation. I don't want to be personal. Everyone. Yeah. But fair enough. But I think what matters most is you've known Christians who have said and done things to you that have hurt you. And I think that stinks because look, Christians are human beings and we also make mistakes.
I've seen Christians insult people.
For sure. But my point is we don't become Christian because we believe other Christians are perfect. We become Christian because we believe in Jesus Christ. We believe that he's perfect. That doesn't require believing that other people are perfect. That doesn't require being a perfect person.
But the whole believing that Jesus is not what makes you anointed. It doesn't give you the power of anointation. I
got to stop you because this conversation is not going anywhere. The point I made was, Ian, you've asserted something about Christians that is not appeared before you out of the entire time we've done the show and had numerous Christians come on talking about their faith. My question is, how could you believe in a general negative depiction of all Christians, or a large sum of them, or a majority of them, or a plurality, when you've not encountered any of those stereotypes in any of the Christians that we've had come here, and not just the people who've been on the show, but even people who work here? That's what I don't understand.
I've seen like Christians behave cruelly.
Sure.
Cruelty. Christians that are lustful. I've seen Christians that are get angry, which is wrath, which is a sin. It's not.
So wait,
in what
assumption
context,
be-
can I ask, in what context is getting angry a sin?
Wrath.
What
Wrath, yeah.
So wrath does not condemn righteous indignation. There are things we should be angry about. So you
True.
basically are saying that being angry at all is sinful and makes a Christian a hypocrite. But again, you don't know what Christians believe about anger or wrath.
The point is just this. You've made several points on several different shows about Christians generally being this hypocritical or negative thing, even though at the very least you could argue you've actually met more Christians who are nice and do adhere to their faith than who don't. But you still maintain the negative over the positive.
I usually have good interactions with people in general because that's what I give people when I interact.
I just feel like if 250 million people in this country identify as Christians, I don't think most of those people are hypocritical. I don't really
care how you
I think a lot of people have
identify them. It doesn't
hypocrisy
make you a
within
good
them.
person. Like you can say on
That's nothing
paper,
to do with what
I'm
I'm
a
talking
Christian.
about.
It doesn't make you a Christian.
That's
It
nothing to
doesn't
do with
make you
what
a
I'm
good
talking about.
person.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Not
actually-
everyone who calls Lord will be saved,
But
right?
Seamus, you would agree with this, and I think there are many Catholic theologians and devout Christians who are much more in alignment with their faith and their everyday life than I surely am, that would tell you, Ian, that the decay of America or the decay of society is the failure of the church.
Yeah.
And
100
the
I would totally
hypocrisy
agree.
of the church, and that them not being the moral shepherd that they were supposed to be in a variety of ways is partially or mostly to blame for how wayward society has gotten. So nobody who is, again, what I think what Tim is trying to say is that nobody who's really Christian, who has a well-formulated worldview on Christianity, is trying to abnegate the culpability of Christians in the wayward ways of the world at all. I think most Christians, in fact, who are real Christians and not just virtue signaling like the left does, will tell you, no, Christians are actually to blame for how things have gotten.
I'll put it this way. Kind of what I'm saying is I grew up Catholic. I went to church. What I saw of Christians depicted on TV didn't make sense to me, because I did not know anybody at my church who acted that way as the media would portray them. Yeah. Ian, you've also not been to church, have you?
A few times, yeah.
Like you've actually
when I was younger, I went to an outdoor Catholic church once. I went to a Methodist church once. I went to a youth group for often every Sunday. I would go like for 3 hours.
The people there were generally
they were just mean kids, and they would play basketball. And
so I think that's the example of it. I see how the left depicts Christians. I see how Jordan Klepper in Comedy Central goes to events and finds people to caricaturize and mock and portray negatively. And then I think about the people I met growing up. Then I think about how I had this moment in my life where our church actually kind of slighted my family, and my family stepped away from them, made me a bit angry, and it felt like these people were lying. And then I met someone who wasn't Christian who talked to me about Jesus, and I was like, oh, they were just bad people.
Yeah, people
and
be like...
And then I realized something as I started to travel around. I remember being at Occupy Wall Street and seeing a conservative pro-life protest, and they were all like, oh man, we're going to go there. Be careful. We're infiltrating. That's what the left said. We showed up a bunch of old ladies waving American flags, and they were waving and smiling, and I was like, none of these people are mean. And then I hear people give general negative depictions of religious people. I'm like, I wonder if that's just a negative media portrayal stereotype. Because if 250 million people in this country identify as Christians, certainly not 250 million people are walking around angry or hypocritical. In fact, not even the majority or plurality of them are typically angry, at least when you see them in person. On Twitter, yeah, they've probably got that angst and anger. But for the most part, when you go outside and touch grass, the people you're talking to, probably Christian. And not all that mean, actually kind of nice. If you collapse in the middle of the street, in the middle of anywhere in this country, someone's going to run up and try and help you for the most part. In some places, they don't. But what I mean to say is,
Right.
Regardless of the religion, I just think it's absurd to caricaturize and stereotype people as generally negative and hold that view of them.
hypocrites, because people will tell me, they'll be like, dude, it doesn't matter what I do. I can do whatever I want because if I believe in Jesus, he forgives me when I die.
I've never
Who
met
said that?
Kids growing up that were taught by their parents from the church, they're like, all my sins will be forgiven if I believe in
Kids?
Jesus.
Children?
Yeah, other like friends, high school kids and whatever.
That's part of the reason why it's a sin, and that's part of the reason why it's a sin and egregious to kill a baby in the womb, because
No, go. Hey,
because children don't have what Aquinas did, what he did for Christianity, what Christianity solved was a merger between Judaism, you could say, and first principles of Greek and Aristotelian thought. And the Catholic belief, the modern Catholic belief, is that the Holy Spirit doesn't exist in and of itself necessarily, that it is embodied and perfected with the human rational mind, and that to live and to think, to have thought, to know God is actually the height and strive of Christian and Catholic belief. And when you rob a fetus of their growth and maturity and faith, that is the ultimate sin. You've taken the innocence of a child.
thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.